which brought many of changes. We suffered as far as lives, our freedoms, and monetary resources. Those situations have caused a lot of anxiety and stress and anger even. And Let's Win KC aims to provide resources to help heal our community and deal with the anger and stress. And it puts us in a better position for our community to win. So we have today's forum divided into two discussions for you. Number one, wellness and winning, a new year mindset. Number two, depression and anxiety, helping save lives. Be sure to share this video along with other resources you'll find here on letswinkc.com and Let's Win KC on social media. And with that, we'll bring on the first panel with one of our Let's Win KC leads, one of KC's business community leaders, Ezzy Redwood.
Hi, Angela. Great to be here. All right. Okay. So as we get started, one of the things that we really want to do is help the audience understand how they can help themselves to be in a position to win through the adversity in this upcoming year. And so to help us understand how we can do that, we're joined today by two amazing people, Alex Alejandra Villalobos McAnderson and Ken Cheadle. Any relation to no, we'll save that for later. But what we'll do is we'll have you all do quick intros just so everyone can understand, who you are and what you do, and then we'll kick into some questions here. So, Alex, let's start with you. Can you tell them who you are and the work, a little bit about the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Alex McAnderson, and I'm the owner of Villalobos Vitality, and really focus on empowering yourself through the connection of mind, body, and spirit. I'm a mindfulness coach and also a Reiki master teacher. So I really focus on the energetic space and the psychospiritual space.
And for those in our audience who don't know what the psychospiritual space is, can you break that down a little bit for us? Even mindfulness for a lot of people is a little bit foreign of a term. We haven't really talked through mindfulness a whole lot in a lot of parts of our society. So I'd love if you could break that down a little bit for us.
Absolutely. So mindfulness is just the act of connecting with yourself from the inside out. It's connecting with that part of you that is limitless, your soul, whatever that higher power is for you, but really stepping out of that autopilot doing to the being, to the just your magic from within. So for me, there's a lot of different things that you can do for mindfulness, and I teach them because that's not something that's really taught, especially in the minority community. We're really taught to grind, to hustle, to keep going, to be a survivor,
Right.
and which are great, amazing attributes, but we almost have to learn to rest. We almost have to learn how to be still and to go within. That's not really something that is taught. So that's what I really like to focus on.
Gotcha. Okay. And now, Ken,
Yes, sir.
for those of you who don't know, we have two superstars here. They're both super humble, so we might talk about them if they don't talk about themselves, well enough, But our best-selling millennial author here. Can you bring us in on what you're doing now?
One of these days, I am running a podcast, The Adverse Effect. I'm still working in healthcare, a home healthcare business for veterans. So to continue to go down that road of continue to give back, has that service line, and working on some new book material that will help out like myself, continue down that path. Adverse Effect is a podcast that specializes in well, I guess our background on it. You're gonna ask me about that anyway. And was you know, growing up in such, in sad environments that I did around the Kansas City area, I found myself going through so many challenges and struggles. I always thought I was the only person that was going through it. But I've been fortunate enough to have a career in a business where it's allowed me to travel. And in travels, I've taken the time to talk to people, met a stranger, and I started to take in stories. And I was like, it'd be cool if we could put these people's stories. They've gone through different adversities out to others. So they could then learn from those stories and feel, one, that they are not the only one out there going through it. They have a sense of community. But two, they have a sounding board. They can figure out how to get over it, like the individual that I made have interviewed.
Got you, got you. And so, what would you say have been some of the examples of obstacles that people have overcome that they've shared on the podcast?
Oh man, we've dealt with a lot of different mental helps, rape victims, burn victims, child molestation, people that have dealt with habits like alcoholism and things to get past. So there's a variety of journeys, different stories that people have shared. But one of the things I know that is true through everybody that I've talked to, these people have gotten to where they started to happen to life happening to them, and that's one of the things I've seen true for every guest, no matter what that they've gone through.
Got it, got it. Okay, so switching to you, Alex. Um, a new year is just a few days away. How would you advise people who want to win 2023 to prepare? What do they need to start doing now so that they can be ready to really take control of and conquer the new year?
Absolutely. So there's two things I want to bring out for this. The first thing is I like to have a word that I focus on for the year. So this year my word was believe. That meant like whenever I felt like as I was out of sorts or if something would happen that would kind of take me out of alignment, I would remember my word and it would bring back like, okay, I believe, I trust. So thinking of a word that's going to bring you back to self. And another thing I want to share is the acronym Go Fam, right? We always like Go Fam, like we're cheering someone on, like Go Fam. But the acronym is actually a great thing to remember as a checklist of things that you can do when you feel a little bit out of alignment. So G is going to be for gratitude, right? You can't be stressed and grateful at the same time. So if you feel really overwhelmed, think about what you're grateful for in the moment, whether it's family, whether it's health. There's always something that you can be grateful for, and that completely shifts the mindset from survivor mode and that fight or flight to more of a resilience homeostasis. So gratitude for G. Then O, we're going to say outside. Nature is so healing. So get yourself outside, be around nature, be around a stream, water. Like nature literally does heal. F, we're going to do for family or tribe. It's so important that you surround yourself with people that are supportive, with people that are constantly going to be checking in on you, making sure that you're okay, and being that resource for one another. And then A, we're going to say ask for help. And that's such an important piece. If something feels like it is too heavy, if something feels like it's too much for you to carry, it's so important that you ask for help. You know, we always preach that 988, you can call that hotline and they can assist and help you. And then M for movement. It's so important. When we have stagnant energy in the body, we feel stuck, we feel tight. So whether it's just movement by either going out, going on a walk, doing yoga, movement, just even like this, if you're nervous, shaking your hands out, that starts to shake the energy off. Putting on your favorite song and dancing to it, that movement starts that flow of energy so that you feel more in alignment. So don't forget, like I said, Go Fam, and that's a great way to have tools that get you back into alignment.
Wow, love it, love it. So now, Ken, we're gonna ask you the same question. We have Alex dropping gems over here. No pressure though, no pressure. you know,
Right, right.
right? With the new year being just a few days away, what would you advise, for people who want to win 2023, to start doing now?
Sure. I always believe in, like, I like the word that you use in there is prepare. You hit. So for me, it's about seeds early. Usually I take a timeout around number one, so the last quarter of the year. For the people that's like, oh, it's the 31st, don't worry about it. Like now, take some time to throw some things against the wall. Some goals that you have. I want to be a better father. I want to expand my business. I want to go higher in my career. What are the things? and then start to figure what is a plan or a map to get to that space, because the preparation is what allows you to get there. So for instance, say, hey, I want to be a better father, more of my kids' recitals or those or events, get that schedule early and put that in on your calendar so you can go ahead, because you'll be more prepared than somebody else, like the other father that didn't do that and he forgets. And I know that's really simple, but it's always about taking the time out to make that and that plan. And when you do that plan and you do that preparation, you end up landing in a good space. That I start every year around October. And I kind of just, I start lightly doing things there. And then towards the end of the year, I get more concrete about what I want to have in the new year. And then those seeds we'll see what they do in the new year. But the plan is the preparation.
Got it. And so when they make those plans, though, like, 'cause I think about everybody makes plans, man. Everyone has goals. Like, how do you get from actually having a goal to actually accomplishing that goal? Because I feel like you're one of those people, Ken, who you say you're going to do, very like crazy things, right? You're like, I'm going to be a best-selling author this year, or I'm going to set up a company that's going to do 6 figures in revenue, separate from my current company that does 6 figures in revenue, or I'm going to go out on my own and I'm going to leave this corporate job and make 6 figures, right? And so those are probably pretty audacious goals that you've been able to fulfill. So, like, what's been your secret, man? We gotta give the people the secret sauce, man. What's been your secret for actually getting to those goals? Like, is that a discipline thing? Is that working backwards on like how you think about it? Like, how have you been able to actually make it to these goals that you set?
For sure. Community. We all know about, like, taking the working it backwards and setting up a plan that way. But I would say the biggest secret sauce that I got is community. Always depending on people like yourself, Ken Lumpkin, and other folks out there in the community that you can be. They can help be a resource to where you're trying to. Sometimes I go out here for ventures and goals. I don't know exactly how I plan to get there, but it may be somebody out there that may have more information about it than what I do. So I will interview those people, in a sense, not like what we're doing now, but just going to have general conversation to find out, hey, how did you go about doing this? And I try to bridge those gaps that will build a team, a collective, and it doesn't mean that people actually meet or they work on a team, but they're inspirational or they provide insight to my life. And the other thing that I do is celebrate wins along the way. So if I'm going to form a new business and I plan to do 6 figures, well, the first thing is to get the LLC. I'm celebrating that I get the LLC certification line. And then I'm celebrating the day that we decide to open up a storefront on our online front. So in those times where you celebrate those wins and get you in a space where you get burnt out, because trying to go after or trying to have these things that are real lofty, you got to have something in between that you can gravitate to them, like, I did that, and you can look back at, because you just going from A to Z, that's a lot. That's where they say, Coach Mack always says, how do you it's one bite at a time, and that's how you achieve a goal.
Man, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, Alex, I'm gonna give you the same follow-up question. How do you actually like turn the corner in accomplishing your goals? And do you build in space for things not to go right? And if so, like, what does that thought process look like?
Yeah, I truly believe that it's a co-creation with your God, with the universe, whatever your higher power is. So to me, if something is not going your way, I know that I'm not being rejected, I'm being protected, right? And I navigate. I like to go downstream instead of constantly swimming upstream, because that takes so much more energy. And I love how we're talking about doing those small movements and celebrating yourself, because it is true. We're not just going to be healthy in one day, but when you do those little micro movements, right, eventually those small changes create really big shifts. And then those micro movements, all of a sudden, you start eating healthy, you start walking longer, you start to see the change. And discipline is one of the most beautiful forms of self-love. And I think tribe is really important as well, because then you have accountability, right? Even though you give yourself grace, you do have the people where like, okay, it's time. Like you said, you're going to accomplish these goals. What things are you doing towards? And I think for me, it's just general movement towards the goal. I try to show myself some grace to it's not how I'm going to get there, but just enjoying the journey, enjoying the things along the way, because as we know, so many of the things that we consider bad or failures end up being the most beautiful teachable moments. Those are the things that build the resilience. Those are the things that teach you. And so I welcome all the lessons, and I just like to flow.
Okay, so keeping with that, like self-care needs to, so one thing that we're going to highlight there is you said having micro wins, and that's critical, right? I think that, you know, so many people lose momentum and fall off the boat because they set audacious goals, you know, and they, to Ken's point, they don't have that community. They don't surround themselves with people who can help them get there. And then they don't have, you know, checkpoints along the way, right? You know, the Tour de France, you know, it's not all one race. It has checkpoints where you're able to say, hey, I've made second in this you know, checkpoint. I'm able to relax and then like gear up and be excited for this next round. So, you know, the great insights there. You know, self-care needs to be intentional, right? You mentioned it, Ken's mentioned it. What are some ways that you'd recommend for people to practice self-care, you know, who maybe are new to the idea?
Uh, So for me, self-care is crucial. It is a non-negotiable, because you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And when you have those goals of being a better entrepreneur, a better partner, a better mother or father, you have to take care of yourself first. And I prioritize it when it comes to my time, when it comes to my investment, my money. It's about me, because I'm betting on myself. One of the things that I love to do is to just be out in nature, move my body, hike. Another thing that's really important with self-care is play. I love spending time with my boys and letting myself be a child. You know, growing up as an immigrant, we were always taught to work. And like I said, I had to learn how to rest. I had to learn how to play. And so being in that space with children where they are light and they're playful and they don't take things seriously and they forgive easily, there's so many lessons that we can learn from children. So for me, a lot of the times in self-care is taking my kids to the trampoline park and just jumping and moving my body and laughing and being playful. And that's something easy for self-care. Also, I love to do yoga and meditation and quiet the mind. I think we as a society are so overstimulated, right, with technology, with deadlines. So taking that time to pause, training my body to not react and instead be really intentional about the response is something that I really had to work on, right? I always say practice the pause. So when you get, whether it's news or a deadline and you feel like the rush, you feel that in your body where you start to tense up, shoulders go up, we kind of like curl up into a ball of stress. Breath and stillness is kind of that antidote. So I take a deep breath, letting it go all the way down to my belly. I relax my shoulder, I unclench my jaw, and I let my body know, like, no, we're good. We're good. So that's a little bit of what I like to do for self-care.
So are you saying you're able to de-stress and take your body out of that fight or flight kind of, you know, anxiousness just through breathing? And if so, like, tell us a
Absolutely.
little bit more about that.
Yeah, there's so much in somatic breathing. There's so much that we overlook, right? So we're very shallow breathers. Most of the time, we're breathing into our lungs. And by doing that shallow breath, it activates that fight or flight. So by taking slow, deep breaths into our belly, we naturally start to relax. Our body starts to relax. Another thing is breath, movement, sound, and touch are 4 ways to really focus on moving any stagnant energy, stepping out of that fight or flight into that relaxation mode. And you find whatever works for you, right? For some people, it's breath work. For some people, it is movement, it's running, it's yoga. For some people, it's sound, right? When we listen to music and sounds that allow us to relax or bring beautiful memories, that also creates that shift within us. And then touch, I'm like I said, I love doing energy work, massage, but just having like that physical touch also lets, putting your hands on your vagus nerve, it in putting that pressure there, it lets it know like we're good, we're okay.
Wow. Okay. And then Alex, the last question for you is, yeah, you kind of covered a lot of ground, but there's some people who, can't even focus on, self-care because they're still trying to get over losses that they're
Yeah.
experiencing. They've taken some L's, and maybe they're still currently taking them,
Mhm.
like, so for those people who are experiencing, are in the middle of hardship, are in the middle of dealing with these situations that, are overwhelming them, or can at least be overwhelming, and they're trying to just survive through that situation. How do you, what advice do you have to help them kind of come out of that tunnel and rise above that situation? Maybe it's thinking through, how they can, better, come at it from a different angle or something like that. Like, what advice do you have for the people who are still in the thick of it?
Absolutely. If you are going through loss, I think that the grieving process is its own journey, right? We don't want to bypass it. You want to kind of sit in it and feel those emotions and honor them. But those emotions are supposed to be like food. We're supposed to taste them, feel them, and then let them go. We're not really taught that. So once we kind of get into the feeling and then we get stuck there, right? And then we start to create stories. So whether you have a clergyman or a healer or a therapist, but really getting some of that out, however that may be, and not judging yourself. There's clients that I'm like, go out and chop some wood, scream, yell, get it out of your system, right? And there's some people that really love journaling, being able to express what they're feeling and not necessarily sharing it with the whole world. And some people really love talk therapy, being able to have someone that is unbiased and being able to share everything that they're feeling. But for me, it's being able, from an energetic sense, to clear that out of the body.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, so Ken, we're coming back to you. So, what would you say is one of the um, what are some of the biggest insights you heard on the Adverse podcast for how people were able to overcome some of those situations while they were in them?
Mm. Again, like I think a lot of that is, when you're going through a lot of things people don't do is they don't really speak out. We internalize a lot of things because we believe that we shame or we're the only ones that's going through these certain things. So one of the biggest things is like is always seeking help, being able to reach out, being able to find somebody that you can be vulnerable with. It's not necessarily easy. You got to find somebody that you can truly trust, good, bad, or indifferent, that they're going to be willing to take your information and hold that sacred. I think therapy. Something I've dealt with myself in therapy to get past certain things, dealt with things that I couldn't figure out on my own. I think getting that sense of clarity, being able to have a sense of community is a big as far as getting past adversities. What you about to say?
Nah, nah, that's great. I guess the last question for you, Ken, is like, how do people know when they're not okay? Right? Where are some of those signs that they can look out for? Because I mean, we're not trained,
Oh,
therapists. Like, how do they know?
Uh, for me, like I learned this last year because of myself. So irritation, with loved ones, people that are trusted ones, being down on yourself, sleep, lack of direction in life. This is an experience that I had last year. I was kind of like on the verge of a mental break, and I didn't know it. And I went a meditation retreat for the first time, and I learned things about myself that I hadn't gotten over, certain issues that I had thought out over. I thought dealt with she had spoken about like going through the grieving process. I had not really done it for my parents and my brothers that had passed. So it built this energy that's just it's too much for you or too much for you to go back. You have to deal with it. Meditation saved my life last year, and able to quiet my mind, to allow the energy that she said get trapped in you, allow it to flow, allow those to flow through, and it put me in a lot better of a space. So, when you want to recognize, have people that are around you that you trust, willing to tell you like, hey, something's off about you. You seem a little bit irritated. You're a little bit frustrated, or you recognize it when you just don't have a sense of direction or lack of sleep.
Love that. And so just to, oh yes,
I have something else. You're out of alignment the way that you drive. That's such a great way to see how people are driving. When you're in the highway and someone cuts you off, like, are you like, it's all right, I'm still getting where I need to go? Or if they cut you off and you're like, then that means that all of that stuff it's bubbling up, right? In another way that I know, for me, it's hard for me to make decisions. I get really in the head space instead of the heart space. So if I go to the restaurant and I'm in alignment, I know, like, boom, that's what I want. That sounds good. That feels good. Let's go. And when I'm like, babe, what do you think? And I'm constantly like second guessing myself, then I'm not connected with myself. So that's a great way to know that you're not in alignment.
Man, that's great. So what we've heard. Oh, go ahead, Ken. Were you gonna say something?
I love what she said. Great response.
So just to wrap up on that. So if you're, so ways of knowing that you're out of alignment, or that you might need to, take a step back and try to clear your mind or meditate or do whatever, is one, if you're starting to feel less decisive and almost like your brain's working overtime, so it's like over revving, and you're having a hard time like really with clarity around decisions. That was a great one. Ken, I think it was a great, something great you said with like, being easy to trigger, like feeling like, there's a lot of pressure on you, like having reactions that are different. And then, asking your family members and those people who know you, if you're acting different, and giving them that space to say yes. Or, so great.
You definitely know when you feel lost, man. Like for some odd reason, for people like us, we're like honestly. So when I started feeling lost last year, with direction I was going in, I was like, like you can recognize it within yourself when you see that.
Powerful. So okay, so we're so glad to have had you all join us. The Ken Sheedle, the Alex Villalobos McAnderson, and Angela. I'm gonna let you go ahead and take us out. Ooh, Angela, I think you are mute. Ooh, Angela, I think you still on mute.
I am back. Everyone
Okay.
can hear me. All right, listen. Thank you, Ezzy. We want to give much thanks to Ken and Alex for that great information. We really, truly needed that. And I want to go ahead and take this time to say to everyone watching on Facebook, you can comment and ask questions. This is your moment, be it for yourself, someone that you know, or a stranger. Please tap in and ask questions or comments. We are here for you. With that being said, we are now going to move on to our next panel. It's on depression and anxiety, moderated by Sam Mollix. She is the president of the Greater KC National Panhellenic Council, representing KC's Black Greeks. All right. So some questions that, are you there, Sam? I think you're on mute too.
Hello.
There you are.
All right. Are we ready for some questions? That was a great discussion.
Absolutely.
Hello. I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourselves. Let's start with you, Tina.
Good afternoon. Well, it's 11:59, but we'll say good afternoon still. I am Tina Rambo Faulkner. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and at the present, I am an educational therapist with Lee Summit School District. And a shameless plug, I just wrote my first book, and it's called I Have ADHD and I Am Okay. And it's featuring a little Black girl who was diagnosed with ADHD, and she's okay. So, wife, mother, and I'm extremely excited to be on this panel today. And let me say this, I get to see my friend Derek Dean, who I went to high school with. Amazing. I haven't seen him in a while. So, hi, Derek.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Derek. Would you also please introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Derek Dean, and I am also a clinically licensed social worker. Currently, I am the Senior Director of Clinical and Specialty Services for Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network, and I also have my own private practice. So, very happy to be here, and it's great to see Tina. A little background, Tina and I used to sing together.
Wow.
We did.
Yes, it's so good to see you again.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to ask both of you this question. So we've seen examples where depression is not always apparent. So what are some signs that we can look for that we can identify depression in our family and friends?
I think some of the things that we can look for is sometimes a sense of withdrawal. The things that used to bring us pleasure, used to bring us joy, we really enjoyed engaging in. All of a sudden, there's just an absence of joy in it. We don't really want to do it. So when you see people sometimes withdrawing from things that have been traditionally very pleasurable, or sometimes there's just a sense of isolation. I just want to be left alone. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be bothered with anyone. Those can be pretty clear indicators sometimes of depression.
And I would add to that fatigue. You can be tired, don't want to get out of bed. And a lot of times we see in children irritability. So that's the kid. Sometimes as adults, we have the ability to say, I'm going to take off because I'm not feeling it today. But when we're sending our kids who are experiencing the same kind of things that we as adults experience, they are irritable and they become that problem or troublesome kid at school. So it could look like anger. It could look like they have behavioral issues, excessive worrying. We see weight loss, weight gain. Sometimes we're not eating how we normally choose to eat. Our appetite is not the best as what it's been in the past.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those were great suggestions for things that I've actually seen from someone who told me that they were dealing with depression, and I didn't notice the signs. But now hearing that from the two of you, I'm like, yeah, those signs were there, and I just didn't recognize them.
And let me add some more to that. A lot of times we can also feel tense. And this is something that we are not even aware that we're doing. And it's like our entire muscles and body is tense. So sometimes our teeth can be clenched and we're not even aware that we're doing that. And sometimes I catch myself doing that and I'm like, relax, Tina, relax. And it's just like, but we're not aware that we're doing it. So sometimes we have to practice with relaxing our entire body, every muscle in our body, including our mouth and our jaws.
Very true.
Okay. Now, I think most people know therapy is the ideal way to deal with depression, but for those who can't afford it or for whom it's not accessible, maybe they don't have insurance, what are some other ways that people can deal with loneliness, depression, the seasonal blues, etc.?
I think first what we need to know is what's out there, because we tend to say that therapy is not accessible, and a lot of times it's not if we don't have insurance. But your community mental health programs will see people on a sliding fee scale. So that's for one. Don't just go without therapy without trying. There's somebody out there that will assist you. But we can do things like aromatherapy. I mean, my family would laugh at me because I would have the little aromatherapy thing and I would put my oils in. But then I noticed that they were coming in, can I use your oil? They started doing it. So aromatherapy. If you can't get to a community mental health place, you can talk to a person of clergy, your pastor, your priest, somebody in the church that would assist you. And that could be until it, ties you over until you receiving help from somewhere else.
Tina took all of my thunder, but I'll
I'm
just kind of
so sorry.
reiterate what she said. One of the things to look for really are trusting, safe relationships. And what I mean by trusting, safe relationships, what relationships do you have that you can come and bare your soul and leave there with your self-esteem still intact? Relationships where there's unconditional positive regard, where you are not reduced to your behavior, you're not reduced to a feeling. Those relationships can be very supportive, and like Tina said, it can really be very beneficial in building a bridge to you are really able to get to therapy and to get in front of a licensed professional. Those healing, redemptive relationships have a lot of power, and the ability to talk, just being able to process through that really has a lot to do with that. So if you're in a position where you're ready to talk, or sometimes you just need the gift of presence. I just need someone else around me. Nothing needs to be said. Just finding those relationships. Who are those people in my life that have those traits that let me know that, hey, I can trust them with something that is as sensitive as this?
Thank you. Okay, so along those same lines, sometimes family members or friends, they will offer a listening ear. They will, invite someone to call and talk about whatever the issues are. So what are some things, if we're in that position, that we should maybe make sure that we say or avoid saying to someone who is experiencing depression?
Well, I think one of the most important things to say or not to say is, please don't ever tell anyone, can't you just get over it? That still bothers you? That is so invalidating. You really want to be there for that person, and sometimes just asking up front, hey, I know sounds like we're gonna be talking about something that's pretty sensitive. What do you need from me? What do you need to hear from me? And giving that person the opportunity to inform you about what supports they need. Sometimes we assume what people need to hear. We assume that, hey, because this works for me, it'll work for Tina. That's not the case. Sometimes just asking those questions, what do you want from me? What do you need from me in this space? Do you need for me just to sit here and be quiet and be present, to be fully attentive? Do you want me to provide feedback? Sometimes asking, solicit that advice. What do you need from me? But on the part of the listener, again, never assume that the person is where they are because they choose to be there. If people can do better, they will. When they have the tools, the strategies, the energy, the resources to move on, they will. Until that time, they are where they are. So I think just being understanding and validating how it feels. You may not understand the situation, but you can always validate the emotion. You can always validate what pain feels like. All of us have been in pain, whether it be physical pain, emotional pain, a heartbreak, a breakup, whatever. You can identify with that feeling. So just being present, making sure that you are mirroring back this is what I think I'm hearing from you. Are you saying A, B, C, D? And giving that opportunity for clarification. No, I'm not really saying that. What I'm really trying to say is this. So just being sure that you're clear on the message that you are receiving, and you do that by checking in with the person.
Thank you. That was
And
great.
I would add to that, and it's also okay to say, you don't have the answer. Sometimes, when people come to us, we think that we have to have the answer. It is totally okay to say, I don't have the answer, but I will work with you. I will stand by your side and we can research it together, or simply be that listening ear, as Derek said.
Thank you. That was great advice. And it's useful for me because I know oftentimes I just assume that, I know what to say or I know what they're going through. So thank you very much for bringing that to my attention, that we can't make those assumptions. And
Right.
It is always better to just ask what you need. All right. So sometimes a person isn't clinically depressed, but maybe they're just down due to a loss, as you mentioned, a breakup, maybe a loss, a death in the family. Is there an expression or a thought of encouragement that we should try to share?
I think, of course, I work in the school setting, and I get a lot of students who the holidays are really sad for them because they've lost mothers, sisters, brothers, grandparents, just friends, and it's not a happy moment for them. So what I try to do with them is for them to create a new tradition, honoring them in different ways, and that doesn't even have to be just for the holidays. It could be, birthdays. It could be, 4th of July or whatever, that you're used to seeing that person. So you create new traditions in that person's memory. I remember when my mom's mother passed, my grandmother passed, and I called my mom and she said this. She said, well, today's my mom's birthday. And I could hear rather the pain in her voice. And so, you know what I did? I went and bought a cake, had them put my grandmother's name on it. And I took it to her to the house. And I was like, well, we're going to have a party for her. And she called her sisters and was like, we have a cake. That little gesture just lit up her world for that day. So just creating new memories, not trying to live in the sad portion, even though we know that that's going to happen, but try to do something that uplifts their spirit during that time.
Yes, and what I would add on to that is making memories a memorial. You can take memories, things that are fond to you, of that person that maybe have passed, and make a memorial out of that. Make a collection of those happy moments. And many times, I think one of the things that we do that puts us further kind of down in the dumps is that we try to avoid it, or we try to act like it's not there. Recognizing and acknowledging that feeling is very healthy and it's very normal. The process of death and dying and grieving, that's not a linear process. You don't just move through every stage real seamlessly, and once you're done, you're done. So many times people vacillate many times between levels at different times, and sometimes that can happen for an extended period of time. So taking an opportunity to take those memories and to make a memorial out of them. Look at old pictures, pull out things that remind you of them, and like Tina said, in a fond way, and really let those things be healing for you. Let those things really kind of help you so you can experience that emotion and still be functional and able to move on.
Thank you. Those are great suggestions. So how do you ground your thoughts and find peace when your mind and your soul is just racing and it's just unrestful?
Tina, you want to take that?
Our mind can bully us. And that's one thing that I tell, students. And when I was in private practice, some of the clients that I used to have, our mind can bully us. And a lot of times our mind can even lie to us. And we can react off of those lies, and we'll approach the world and people based off of what sometimes our mind is telling us. So for instance, if our mind is telling us that Lisa doesn't like us, and Lisa has no clue that our mind is telling us that, we will treat Lisa really bad based off of what our mind has told us. And then it will create tension between us and Lisa has no idea of what our mind has been telling us. So sometimes the very simple thing of telling our mind, that's not the truth of what you're telling me. I don't have to accept, that consistent horrible thought or that consistent negative thought that you have on me. I don't have to accept that. And then I think what happens when we change our mind pathways and start putting more positive things in there, then you'll do that with everything in your life. Every time you even see something negative, you can make it be positive.
Yes, I think Tina and I have been to a lot of the same places, because I was going to say something very similar. I always tell people, run the simple test. Is the thought true, and is it helpful? Is it true? And back to Tina's point, many times our mind can create a narrative and we start behaving in alignment with that narrative, but really stopping and asking yourself, is this true? And then secondly, is this thought helpful? And that can be a way of you kind of reining in your mind and stop having those runaway thoughts. The other thing that you can really do that really helps, I'm a Christian, I attend church, find you a Bible verse, find you something to meditate on. Because the issue becomes this: whatever you feed your mind, that's what you're going to respond to. So whatever in you abundantly will come out of you eventually. So that's why you have to be very careful and very conscious about what you are feeding your mind. And to Tina's point, you can't let your mind bully you. You can't. So you have to determine what you will think about. You can't just let your mind roam free. Just like a child. You would not take any child to a mall and just let them go. No, you walk with that child. You guide them. You make sure that they stay out of trouble. Your spirit is the same way. So your spirit is directly affected by what's going on with your mind. So if you allow everything and anything into your mind, then that's why we feel sometimes those ways. So one of the things I again say is the thought true? Is this thought helpful? And then determining what you will think about. Set your mind on a topic. Set your mind on something that's positive. The other thing that you can do is really just getting into a quiet place and quieting the body. Get to a quiet place where your body is still, your mind is still, and you can really determine what you need to think about. It's hard to make decisions when you're on the go.
That's true. Great advice. Thank you very much. So my next question is about self-care. First, I'd like to know how you define self-care, and then what are some examples or ways that the average person can apply self-care to their lives? And we'll start with you, Tina.
I define self-care as really just taking care of you at a point to where nothing else matters, and I don't want to say nothing else matters, but you're putting you first. You're putting your thoughts first. You're putting your emotions first. You're simply putting yourself first. And to me, I had to self-care for me was learning how to simply say no. I used to, every time, Tina, can you do this? And I would run over here. Tina, can you do that? Can you do? And I would run over here. And simply learning how to say no with no guilt or no shame with it was one of the best things I could ever do, was learn to say no. But with self-care, I think, of course, now, it seems like it's a big word of today, or the go-to word, but it's important that we learn to practice self-care. And that's simple things like, what, today is just my day. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to do absolutely nothing. To me, that is one of the best things ever. And my kids are like, Mom, you should get up, you should go. And I'm like, man, sitting on this balcony, just watching, my dog run across and listen to music is the best thing I could have ever done. And that's just me not dealing with the hustle and bustle of the world, the hustle and bustle of work, the hustle and bustle of politics, the hustle and bustle of just life in general, just taking time for me and relaxing and pushing that reshift button or that reset button to make sure that I can make it the next week and beyond.
Thank you.
Yes, I would say that self-care really is attending to every aspect of you. So we're made up of more than just one part. So what do I need to do to manage my body? Whether that's exercise, it could be going walking, it could be fishing. What do I need to do for the body? What do I need to do for my mind? How do you recharge and how do you reset your mind? How do you recharge and reset your spirit? All three of those domains have to be managed. So when you talk about self-care, that's what I think about. How am I going to attend to these different domains of my life that are very important? In fact, they are critical to my functioning. If any one of those three are out of whack, it's going to definitely diminish my ability to function. In terms of self-care, in terms of what I do a lot of sometimes just being still. I have a very busy life. A lot of my life is spent, serving, working with others, working with clients, working with staff, writing reports, finding data. So sometimes the ability to make myself sit down and to stay there, because my temptation is always for me to get up and get busy doing something, because that's one of the ways I fill my cup. I fill my cup through busyness, through meeting other people's needs. But I also have to balance that with knowing that I have to take time and do the same thing for myself, refuel myself, replenish myself. And it is non-negotiable. It is non-negotiable. It is just like when you take any other form of medicine. When you miss that medicine, there's an adverse effect. So I cannot pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
I cannot. I must make sure that I put myself as a priority. And in our culture, we think that means that you're self-centered. That means that you're selfish. That means that you are not mindful of others. It actually means just the opposite. It means I am thinking about you. Because again, if I'm not well, you don't want to be around me when I'm not well. So self-care really deals with me taking care of every domain of myself and making sure that I'm at optimal levels to serve. Because there's a level that I just need to be at just for Derek. Then there's another level that I need to be at so that I can serve and meet the needs of my community, my clients, my staff, my family. So making sure that you're at the optimal level so you can really function in a healthy way.
And to piggyback on what Derek was saying, especially working for a school, students. Miss Faulkner, can you come to my game? After and now I'm a cheer coach now, so I mean, I sort of self-defeated on that. But can you come to this? My party's this weekend. Can you come? And some days I don't want to see kids as much as I love them. I don't I want adult conversation. And so this is what I tell them. A lot of times when we get on a plane, what do they say? They say, when you're putting on your oxygen mask, and if you have a child with you, they say to you, you parent put on yours first, and then you attend to your child. Because if you're putting on your child's mask first, and then you pass out, your child no longer has someone to take care of them. So in order for us to just working in this field could be draining within itself. And we knew what we signed up for when we got the degrees and became licensed. We knew what it was. But just having people pour, their stories and their sad stories and even their happy moments just pouring in, or talking to you every day about their lives thing, it can be burdensome sometimes, and burnout can occur. So self-care is really important for those who work, for those of us who work in the education field, in the mental health field, and really in any field, really.
I want to add one last thing, something that I think is very important, especially for therapists and for clinicians. Keep in mind, there must be a line of demarcation between work and life.
Mhm.
I'm not everybody's therapist. I'm not the community. I'm not the church's therapist. I'm not the community therapist. There has to be a line of demarcation. So like Tina's saying, even those pleasant things because even going to a game, that's fun, but you're still giving something. You're still giving. So you have to make sure that you have clear boundaries. And sometimes no is the kindest thing you can say.
That is so true. Someone that I really respect says all the time that there is a healthy level of selfishness. So we think of being selfish or self-centered as those are negatives and it's a bad word. But we all need to be a little bit selfish and a little bit self-centered in order to make ourselves a priority. You're both very correct on that. Thank you. So you mentioned earlier about the community resources, that even if someone is uninsured, there are resources for mental health support. So could you all give us some resources here in the Kansas City area that a person could contact?
Probably one of the easiest things to do is to look up your local community mental health center. That is the easiest resource to access. Many of them do have a sliding scale fee. And then also, if you have Medicaid or if you're uninsured, you don't have the ability to pay, that does not mean you won't be seen. Okay? It does not mean that you won't be seen. So that is probably one of the easiest things that you can do to access resources. Looking on Psychology Today, where you can just see profiles of therapists. You can see what they specialize in, whether they're male, female, black, white, gay, lesbian, whatever the issue is you're trying to address. So Psychology Today can be a great way of just finding out what's in your area. Lastly, just Google therapist near me, therapist in this zip code. You can literally Google that and get some ideas of what you can do and what resources are available to you.
And I agree with everything Derek said. One thing I like about Psychology Today, it allows you to specify what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a female African American female therapist, you can type that in there, and you can put your zip code in there, and it's going to pull up all the African American female therapists or male, whatever you're looking for. Even if you're wanting someone who's dealing with a certain type of therapy, you can put that in there.
Right.
So it is a great tool, psychologytoday.com. And all you have to do is, like Derek said, Google that. You can Google that, but Google that. There's an app for that. But do all of that. There's so many resources that are at our fingertips. And I know a lot of times it's easier for us to go to Facebook and say, Facebook, and let's be careful of that. We'll put Facebook, I'm feeling, suicidal. And you're going to get 6 million different suicidal responses for people who has no professional background, opening you up, not closing you back, and you're going to leave worse off than you were before. So and really, there are a lot of people who look like us that are in this field. We just have to know how to access them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was great information. Thank you. Because my follow-up question was going to be, so if you want an African American, or if you want, a specific cultural identity, how do we find those? And so that's great to know. Psychology Today has the filters that would allow us to find someone specific.
I wanted to add one comment. I think Tina hit on an extremely important point. We need to recognize the role that social media plays in our lives. And when you start talking about your emotional health, your relationship status, things that are very personal and intimate, one of the most damning things you can do is head to social media. That is one of the worst things you can do. I told a friend of mine earlier, I said, don't post till it's permanent, till something is settled. We love to post, oh, I'm in a relationship, or I'm out of town, this, that, and the other. Let social media be just for entertainment, because many times we're trying to live our lives through social media, post just the right picture with just the right hairdo, with just the right smile. And that's not who we are. So it is very important that we recognize the role that social media plays. And it is not a place where you go and get professional help online in that respect. So just be very careful about social media.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, that is very true. But since you mentioned online, are there some resources where someone could receive counseling or therapy online if they're not able to do it face to face?
Definitely.
Well, actually, we're seeing this, especially probably with the height of COVID. It started happening a little bit before there. You can actually receive your therapy online now. So BetterHelp is a place that you can go where you can receive a therapy, find a therapist online, and sort of like how we're, conversing back and forth. You can have your sessions now virtual. And so that's one big deal that you can do. If you're not able to leave your house for some reason, but you still need services, therapeutic services, online could help. So,
Yes, and the vast majority, I would say, of therapeutic services now are being offered online. There are still, of course, brick and mortar buildings where you can physically go, park your car and go in, but so many services now are being offered online. So the ability for you to physically attend is not a requirement, and don't let that be a barrier to you. You can still attend. If you have internet, you can still attend.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I'll let Angela conclude. I think you're still on
Thank you
mute.
so much. I have a question. I want to thank you both, Tina and Derek, for being part of this panel. And I especially want to thank you, Tina, for mentioning our youth. I think oftentimes we can forget that our youth are experiencing mental health issues such as depression or what have you. And then I also want to ask this for any of us who may be very functional. However, we do have those moments where we are triggered, which can take us into very deep depths. Can you give, either one of you give, or both, give insight to those who may be experiencing triggers that can have them having suicidal thoughts, or even contemplating or attempting those suicidal thoughts from past traumas from childhood or adult?
one thing I would like to say, Angela, about those thoughts, and this is one thing that I work with a lot of my students on. I tell them all the time to be careful with making long-term decisions based off of something that's short-term. And I am aware, though, even though when we're in the middle of that, it feels like forever and it feels long-term, but we don't want to be in the habit of making something that will make long-term issues for us. And so knowing what our triggers are, we should also let people know what our triggers are that are around us. Mm-hmm. It's okay to do that. So, I probably a couple of years ago, I lost like so many loved ones, like in the course of a month, and everybody saw me as that strong person, and I had to tell my family, I'm not well right now. I'm not. And that was one of the best things I could have done. At first I had some shame with them knowing that I was not well, because here you are, this therapist, but guess what? Therapists, we're not always well too. And so I let them know I'm not well. And I need for you guys to know, when you joke about this thing, it sort of triggers me. It sort of hurts me. It sort of offends me. And that was one of the best things that I could have done. So even letting other people know what our triggers are could be helpful.
Very true. And then also too, learning not to sit in that. Even when you are triggered, don't sit in it. And I think many times that's what the inclination is to do. I'm triggered, so I cut off everything. I cut off everybody. I get by myself. Well, then that's just you and your thoughts at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you and whatever your mind is telling you. And again, we can't always trust the narrative that our mind creates, because my mind is going to create a narrative based off of other things that I've been through. So it may be trying to create a narrative now for something that happened 10 or 12 years ago. So being aware of what those triggers are, and not being in that moment just without end. Get up, start talking, start moving. Even simply moving the body will make you feel better. There are endorphins that are released just when you physically move your body. And sometimes something as simple as changing your environment. Change the environment. Physically go to somewhere else. Physically go to a park. Physically go to somewhere where there's pleasant surroundings, where there's green grass, where there's water flowing. You know, putting on something like just the sound of rushing water or rain can help kind of bring you out of those moments.
Thank you so much. And I do want to ask, for those people who might not know yet how to identify those triggers, can you provide some insight on how they may be able to do that?
I think identifying triggers is somewhat fairly simple. And what I mean by that is, if the engagement that I'm having with you is, and I'm steadily feeling worse and worse, that means something is going on. I'm having a response. So when you're engaged in a conversation and I'm becoming really heightened, I'm becoming really upset, my voice is going up, da 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 da. I'm telling myself, hey, there's something, you've been triggered by something. Likewise, if someone's talking about a past event, and especially now on the news where there's so much constant exposure to murder, to death, to homicide, to suicide, if you're taking in that and you're feeling worse, you're finding out that, hey, I can't let go of these thoughts, that means you're being triggered.
And triggers could be, it could be a smell as well. So say, for instance, if you experienced some trauma, for instance, a rape, if a person had on some cool water cologne, let me just make something up, the smell of that can be a trigger for you. It could be a color. It could be so many things that, as Derek said, can heighten our senses to what we've been exposed to.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam. I want to go ahead and ask about some tips on how our audience can prepare to win in the new year. Have you gotten into that yet?
I have not. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn.
That's what we are all here. We are all here to win. So I want to take this time and ask you both, Tina and Derek, what advice can you give to our audience to prepare for themselves to win in 2023 as it is approaching right around the corner?
We know that, okay, I know the, what's the board that they call that a lot of people like to do? The
vision board.
The vision board. Some people that really, really works for a vision board. You can set what it is you want for the year, and then that vision board can be your guide, your path. For me, I choose a word of the year. I haven't decided which one. I sort of let God lead me on that. And then I do reflect, though, on what it was I learned from the previous year. So I'll say, okay, this year was a year of persistence, me having to push through something. And so what do I want to take from last year that I want to do for next year? And I haven't come up with my this year's word, but I will be doing that this week. I got a couple of days left, but I did identifying what it is you want the new year to look like and working and reaching towards that.
Awesome.
Yes, I would say something that I've really kind of been thinking and meditating on is my success is directly proportionate to my level of discipline. And then you can apply that to any area. If you want to feel better, you want to look better, you want your finances to be in a better spot, none of it is just going to happen. You're going to have to set down some structure. You're going to have a plan and be willing to commit to it regardless of the obstacles. So everything is not going to be rosy next year. We're all hoping for the best, but we know that you can hope for the best and sometimes receive things that are not the best. So what keeps me from going off the rails? What keeps me from aborting the plan? I have to be disciplined. You have to be disciplined in how much time I spend in recreation. I have to be disciplined in how much time I spend at work. And when I'm not at work, being sure I disconnect from work. That's discipline, or what we call boundaries. So if your boundaries are poor, it directly correlates to your level of success. So if I'm taking on everybody's burdens, if I'm getting involved in things that don't directly affect me and allowing myself to be emotionally tied up into that, then that's going to derail what I need to do for myself. So I would encourage everyone, don't rely on emotions in this new year. Decide on discipline. I'm going to set down boundaries, and then I'm going to set up an action plan. Boundary, this is what I want. These are my objectives. This is how I'm going to accomplish it. And let discipline really be the drive for this year, not emotions.
Thank you so much, everyone. That concludes our Mental+Health Forum. If you need tips on coping tips for mental health therapists and contact infos, there is even a new mental health pocket card. What is that? Please go to letswinkc.com to find out those resources and what a new mental health pocket card is and what it can do for you. We also want to thank you for tuning in. We want to thank our guests, and please be sure to follow us at letswinkc.com and Let's Win KC on social media for events, resources, and everything that we have coming for you. Let's Win KC.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.